I am sitting in my corner office right now, looking at a text message from my mother. 12 years of silence, and suddenly, she wants to talk. The message says it is about my sister Drusilla's wedding, and they need to discuss something important with me. My hands are trembling not from fear, but from the memories flooding back. These are the same people who told me I would never amount to anything. Now they need something from me. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. If stories about family betrayal and rising above expectations speak to you, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Stick around because what they asked me for will leave you completely speechless. Growing up in a modest house in the suburbs of Columbus, Ohio, I always felt like a stranger in my own home. My father worked as a manager at a manufacturing plant, and my mother handled accounting for an insurance company. We were not wealthy, but we had enough. There was always food on the table, a roof over our heads, and money in savings. At least that is what I believed as a child. My sister Drusilla came into this world 3 years after me. From the moment she arrived, everything changed. She had golden curls, bright blue eyes, and a smile that could melt anyone's heart. My parents called her their little princess, and they meant it literally. Her bedroom was twice the size of mine. Her closet overflowed with new dresses while I wore hand-me-downs from cousins I had never met. She took ballet lessons, piano lessons, and anything else her heart desired. I remember sitting at the dinner table watching my parents hang on every word Drusilla spoke. She would talk about her day at school, about the boys who had crushes on her, about the friends who invited her to parties. My parents would laugh at her jokes, praise her stories, and beam with pride. When I tried to share something, they would nod absently and change the subject back to my sister. There was this one time that still burns in my memory. I had just turned 12 years old. I woke up that morning expecting at least a small celebration. Maybe pancakes for breakfast or a card on the kitchen table. Instead, I found my parents discussing Drusilla's upcoming dance recital. They had completely forgotten my birthday. When I finally reminded them that evening, my mother gasped and apologized quickly. She handed me $20 and told me to buy myself something nice. Meanwhile, Drusilla's birthdays were legendary events with themed parties, dozens of guests, and cakes that cost more than my entire wardrobe. Despite the constant overshadowing, I found my own passion. Computers fascinated me from an early age. While other kids played sports or chased popularity, I spent hours at the local library reading about programming languages and software development. The internet opened up a whole new world for me. I taught myself to code using free online resources and borrowed books. I dreamed of attending a great university and studying computer science. I believed that education would be my ticket out of the shadow I had lived in my entire life. Throughout high school, I poured everything I had into academics. I maintained straight A grades in every subject. I joined the science club, the math team, and the computer club. I stayed after school to work on projects and spent weekends preparing for standardized tests. My guidance counselor told me I had a real shot at some excellent universities. For the first time in my life, I felt hope. During the spring of my senior year, everything came crashing down. I had just received an acceptance letter from Ohio State University for their computer science program. They even offered me a partial scholarship. I still needed about $15,000 per year for tuition and living expenses, but I knew my parents had savings. They had always talked about setting money aside for their children's education. This was my moment. I walked into the living room with the acceptance letter clutched in my hands. My father was watching television, and my mother was preparing dinner in the kitchen. My heart was pounding with excitement as I approached them. "Mom, Dad, I got accepted to Ohio State," I announced, holding up the letter. "They gave me a partial scholarship. I just need some help with the rest." My father barely glanced at the paper. He let out a heavy sigh and muted the television. My mother came out of the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Neither of them looked particularly impressed. "How much help are we talking about?" my father asked, his voice flat. "About $15,000 a year," I said. "But with my scholarship and maybe a part-time job, I can cover some of it myself." I just need you to help me get started." My father exchanged a look with my mother. Something passed between them, something cold and dismissive. Then he turned back to me with words that would haunt me for years. "We are not wasting money on your college," he said bluntly. "You are not like your sister. You will not be successful anyway." I stood there frozen, unable to process what I had just heard. My mother said nothing. She just stood there with her arms crossed, nodding slightly as if she agreed with every word. "What do you mean?" I managed to ask. "You always said you would help pay for college." "That money is for Drusilla," my father replied. "She has real potential. She is going to a top business school and making something of herself. You should consider learning a trade or getting a regular job." My mother finally spoke up. "You are just not college material, honey. We are trying to protect you from disappointment." The acceptance letter in my hands suddenly felt worthless. All those years of hard work, all those nights studying instead of sleeping, all those sacrifices I made to be the best student I could be. None of it mattered to them. I was never going to be good enough in their eyes. Drusilla walked past at that moment, having overheard the entire conversation. She did not offer any words of support or sympathy. She just shrugged her shoulders, smirked, and continued up the stairs to her room. That night I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling. Tears streamed down my face as I gripped that acceptance letter so tightly it crumpled in my fist. The rejection felt like a physical wound, like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart until it could barely beat. But somewhere in that darkness something else emerged. A spark of defiance, a stubborn refusal to let their words define my future. I made a promise to myself that night. I whispered it into the empty room like a sacred vow. I will prove them wrong, even if it kills me. The day after graduation, I packed everything I owned into 2 garbage bags and left home. I did not say goodbye. I did not look back. I found a tiny room in a rundown apartment complex on the other side of Columbus. The place had peeling wallpaper, a leaky faucet, and neighbors who played loud music at all hours. But it was mine. It was the first thing that was truly mine. I took 3 jobs to survive. Mornings started at 5 when I worked at a coffee shop making lattes and cleaning tables until noon. Afternoons meant loading boxes at a warehouse until 6. Nights found me sitting behind a security desk at an office building until midnight. I slept 4 hours on good days, sometimes less. My diet consisted of instant noodles, day-old bread from the coffee shop, and whatever fruit I could afford. I enrolled at Columbus State Community College, taking classes whenever my schedule allowed. Most of my courses happened on evenings and weekends. I would work all day, drag myself to class, and then study until I could not keep my eyes open anymore. There was one night I passed out in the warehouse break room from sheer exhaustion. My coworkers found me unconscious and called for help. The paramedics said I was severely dehydrated and malnourished. I was back at work the next morning. The loneliness was almost worse than the physical strain. My parents never called. They never texted. They acted as if I had simply ceased to exist. Drusilla would occasionally send me messages, but they were never out of concern. She sent photos of her dorm room at the expensive private business school our parents were funding. She shared pictures from spring break trips to tropical beaches. She posted about shopping sprees and fancy dinners. Each message felt like salt in an open wound. Holidays were the hardest. I spent my first Thanksgiving alone in that cramped apartment, eating a microwave dinner while watching other families gather through the window across the street. Christmas came and went without a single phone call from home. New Year's Eve found me working the security desk, watching the clock tick past midnight, while couples kissed on the television mounted in the lobby. Everything changed when I met Professor Marcus Webb. He taught Introduction to Programming at the community college, and from the first class he saw something in me that my parents never did. He noticed how I stayed after lectures to ask questions. He observed how I turned in assignments that went beyond the requirements. One day he asked me to stay after class. "What is your story?" he asked simply. I told him everything. The rejection from my parents, the struggle to survive, the dream I refused to let die. He listened without interruption, nodding slowly as I spoke. "You have talent," he said when I finished. "Real talent. You should not be stuck at a community college. Have you considered transferring to a 4-year university?" I laughed bitterly. "I can barely afford ramen noodles. How am I supposed to afford a university?" Professor Webb smiled. "There are scholarships for students exactly like you. Students who have overcome adversity. Students who have proven themselves against all odds. Let me help you." Over the next several months, Professor Webb became my mentor, my advocate, and the closest thing I had to family. He helped me research universities and scholarship programs. He reviewed my application essays and wrote glowing letters of recommendation. He pushed me to apply to Georgia Tech, one of the top engineering schools in the country. When the acceptance letter arrived with a full scholarship based on my academic achievements and financial hardship, I broke down completely. I sat on the floor of my apartment and sobbed like I had not cried since that terrible night years before. But these were different tears. These were tears of disbelief and gratitude and vindication all mixed together. Meanwhile, Drusilla was living her best life on our parents' dime. She changed her major 3 times, extending her graduation by 2 additional years. She studied abroad in Europe. She drove a car our parents bought her. She never worked a single day. And our parents continued to praise her, continued to fund her, continued to believe she was the successful one. I moved to Atlanta for Georgia Tech and threw myself into my studies. I graduated with honors in computer science. A startup company hired me as a junior developer right out of college, and I discovered I had a gift for not just writing code, but understanding how technology could solve real business problems. Within 5 years, I had risen from junior developer to senior engineer to team lead. That was when I met Nathan. He was a brilliant engineer with an entrepreneurial spirit that matched my own. We started talking about problems we saw and how companies managed their data. We sketched ideas on napkins during lunch breaks. We stayed late after work to build prototypes. Eventually, we decided to take the leap together. Starting our own company was terrifying. The first 3 years nearly broke us. We maxed out credit cards, worked out of a cramped garage, and came within days of bankruptcy twice. But we kept pushing. We kept believing. And then everything changed. A major technology corporation approached us about acquiring our software. The negotiations took months. The due diligence was exhausting. But when the deal finally closed, our company sold for $20 million. After splitting with Nathan and paying taxes, I walked away with approximately $8 million. I bought a nice apartment in Atlanta. I purchased a reliable car. I invested wisely. But I never became flashy about my success. I did not post about it on social media. I did not call my parents to brag. I simply lived my life quietly and peacefully. Over those 12 years, my contact with family remained minimal. I sent Christmas cards out of habit. I called on birthdays out of obligation. The conversations were always brief and superficial. My parents never asked about my career or my life. They never apologized for what they said. They never acknowledged that I had proven them wrong. Drusilla did not contact me at all. To her, I might as well have been dead. That was fine with me. I had built something beautiful from the ashes of their rejection. I did not need their validation anymore. Then one ordinary Tuesday evening, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. 12 years of near silence, and suddenly she wanted to see me. Something about Drusilla's wedding, something important to discuss. I stared at that message for a long time, my past and present colliding in ways I never expected. I agreed to meet them in Columbus. Part of me was curious. Part of me still held on to some faint hope that maybe they had changed. Maybe they wanted to apologize. Maybe they finally recognized how wrong they had been. The restaurant my mother chose was upscale, the kind of place with cloth napkins and waiters who introduced themselves by name. I arrived early and took a seat facing the door. I wanted to see them before they saw me. My parents walked in together. The years had not been kind to them. My father's hair had gone completely gray, and he walked with a slight stoop. My mother's face was lined with wrinkles I did not remember. They looked older than they should have, worn down by something I could not identify. "It is so good to see you," my mother said, pulling me into an awkward hug. "You look wonderful." "You look healthy," my father added, shaking my hand stiffly. We made small talk for a few minutes. They asked about the weather in Atlanta. I asked about their neighbors in Columbus. Neither side ventured into anything meaningful. We were strangers performing the rituals of family. Then Drusilla arrived with her fiancé. Preston came from old money. His family owned commercial real estate across the Midwest. He wore a tailored suit and a watch that probably cost more than most people's cars. Drusilla hung on his arm like a trophy, her designer dress and perfect makeup announcing her status to everyone in the room. "Hello, brother," she said, barely looking at me. "Glad you could make it." Preston shook my hand with the disinterested politeness of someone who had already assessed my worth and found it lacking. He had no idea who I was or what I had accomplished. To him, I was just the estranged brother from the wrong side of the family story. We ordered dinner. The conversation remained surface level through the appetizers and main course. I kept waiting for someone to explain why I was really there. Finally, over dessert, my mother cleared her throat and reached across the table to take my hand. "Sweetheart, we need to talk about Drusilla's wedding." She began, her voice dripping with sweetness I had never heard directed at me before. "It is going to be absolutely beautiful. A destination ceremony at a luxury resort. 300 guests. Everything perfect for our little princess." "That sounds expensive," I said neutrally. "Well, that is actually what we wanted to discuss with you." My mother squeezed my hand tighter. "The total cost is around $300,000. Preston's family has graciously agreed to cover half." "That is very generous of them," I replied, still not understanding where this was going. My father jumped in. "The thing is, son, we have had some financial setbacks. We used most of our retirement savings helping Drusilla through college and getting her settled. We do not have enough to cover our portion." The pieces started coming together in my mind, but I needed to hear them say it. "What exactly are you asking me?" I said slowly. My mother smiled that sweet smile again. "We need you to contribute $130,000 for your sister's wedding. You are family after all. We have heard through relatives that you have done quite well for yourself. It is time to give back to the people who raised you." The air left my lungs. I sat there in stunned silence as the audacity of their request sank in. $130,000. For a wedding. For the sister they had always favored. From the son they had abandoned and dismissed. "Do you remember what you told me 12 years ago?" I asked, my voice steady, despite the storm raging inside me. "When I asked for help with college..." My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "That was a long time ago," my father mumbled. "Let me refresh your memory," I continued. You told me you would not waste money on my education. You said I was not like Drusilla. You said I would never be successful anyway." "That was different," my mother protested. "We were trying to protect you from disappointment." "Protect me?" I almost laughed. "You abandoned me. You left me to figure everything out alone while you poured everything into Drusilla." My father's face reddened. "You turned out fine without college anyway." "I graduated from Georgia Tech with honors," I informed him, watching his eyes widen in surprise. "I worked 3 jobs and put myself through community college first. I earned a full scholarship. I did all of that without a single dollar from either of you." "Well, then you understand how important hard work is," my mother said, completely missing the point. "Which is why you should help your sister now." I turned to Drusilla, who had been silent this entire time, scrolling through her phone as if this conversation had nothing to do with her. "What do you have to say about all this?" She looked up with irritation. "Look, you owe this family. You abandoned us years ago. The least you can do is help with my special day." "When exactly did any of you reach out to me in 12 years?" I asked. "When did you call to see how I was doing? When did you offer any support or encouragement?" Silence. None of them had an answer because there was no answer. They had never reached out. They had never cared. Until they needed something. I stood up from the table, my decision already made. I am not giving you $130,000. I am not giving you a single cent. Excuse me, my father sputtered. The money I have I earned myself. Every single dollar came from my own work, my own sacrifice, my own determination. You contributed nothing to my success. You do not get to benefit from it now. I looked at my father directly. You told me I would never be successful. I proved you wrong, but I did not do it for your approval. I did it for myself. I turned to my mother. You stood there and said nothing when Dad crushed my dreams. You agreed with him. You told me I was not college material. You do not get to play the loving mother now that you need something. Finally, I faced Drusilla. You have had everything handed to you your entire life. Every opportunity, every advantage, every dollar you ever needed. Maybe it is time you learned what it feels like to actually earn something. My father slammed his hand on the table. You ungrateful son. My mother started crying. How can you be so selfish? We are your family. We need you. Drusilla stood up, her face twisted with anger. You are ruining my wedding. Is that what you want? To ruin the most important day of my life? Preston sat quietly, clearly uncomfortable and probably regretting his choice of bride. I reached into my wallet and placed enough cash on the table to cover my portion of the meal. Then I looked at each of them one final time. I spent 12 years building a life without you, I said calmly. I can spend the rest of my life doing the same. Goodbye. I walked out of that restaurant without looking back. With every step toward the door, I felt lighter. The weight I had carried for so long finally lifted from my shoulders. Whatever hold they once had over me was broken forever. On the way to the airport, my phone buzzed repeatedly with messages. Pleading from my mother. Threats from my father. Insults from Drusilla. I did not read any of them. I simply turned off my phone and watched the Columbus skyline fade in the rearview mirror. The first few weeks after that confrontation were harder than I expected. During quiet moments, doubt would creep in. Maybe I had been too harsh. Maybe I should have offered something smaller. Maybe I was wrong to cut them off completely. But then I would remember. I would remember the dismissal, the favoritism, the years of struggling alone while they gave everything to Drusilla. And I would know that I had made the right choice. I blocked their phone numbers. I unfollowed them on social media. I created a boundary that they could not cross. Through mutual relatives, I learned what happened next. The grand destination wedding at the luxury resort was canceled. Drusilla had to settle for a modest ceremony at a local venue. She posted complaints online about her heartless brother who abandoned the family in their time of need. A few people reached out to me asking for my side of the story. I simply told them the truth and let them draw their own conclusions. The interesting thing about healing is that it rarely happens in dramatic moments. It happens slowly in small steps, in quiet realizations. I found peace not through revenge or validation, but through building a life filled with people who actually cared about me. Nathan became like a brother to me. We went through fire together building our company, and that kind of bond cannot be broken. Professor Webb, who retired from teaching but never stopped mentoring me, became the father figure I never had. And then there was Megan. We met at a technology conference, and she understood me in ways I never thought possible. She knew my history and loved me not in spite of it, but because of how it shaped me. I started a scholarship fund for students from difficult family situations. Every year I help 5 young people attend college who otherwise could not afford it. I read their applications, their stories of neglect and dismissal and fighting against expectations. I see myself in each of them, and I make sure they know that someone believes in them. Looking back at my journey, I realize something strange. That terrible night when my parents rejected me might have been the best thing that ever happened. It forced me to become stronger than I ever thought possible. It taught me that my worth was not determined by people who could not see it. It pushed me to build a life that was truly my own. Do I forgive my parents and Drusilla? That is a complicated question. I do not carry hatred in my heart anymore. Hatred is exhausting, and they are not worth that energy. But forgiveness does not mean allowing people to continue hurting you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away. I am sitting in my apartment now, looking out at the Atlanta skyline as the sun sets. My phone has been quiet for months. No more messages from Columbus. No more demands or guilt trips or attempts at manipulation. Just peace. If you are watching this and you come from a family that does not believe in you, I want you to know something important. Their doubts do not have to become your reality. Their limitations do not have to become your boundaries. You have the power to write your own story, even if you have to start from nothing. Some people will never see your worth no matter how bright you shine, and that is okay. You are not shining for them. You are shining for yourself. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to prove yourself to people who doubted you? How did you handle family members who treated you unfairly? Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who is going through the same thing. If this video touched your heart, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message today, share this video with them. Thank you for spending this time with me. Whatever challenges you are facing right now, I hope you find the strength to keep going. You are more capable than you know. You are more valuable than anyone has told you. And your story is not over yet. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.